Both Ramona and Serena had a habit of indulging their forbidden desires whenever the mood struck. They often paid young men to fulfill their fantasies, with the help of a close friend who had a knack for finding the perfect match to suit their preferences. Whether they were after someone muscular, six-packed, bearded, or sporting that bad boy look, their friend always knew how to negotiate and deliver. If they were feeling particularly adventurous, they didn't hesitate to spend extra for a threesome with their chosen companions. Hi there, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life story. This one takes us to Romania, starting in the city of Brăila before shifting to Galati. It's a bit of a long story, but trust me, it's worth sticking around for. The twists and turns in this case will keep you hooked as we unravel the intriguing details about the perpetrator and what really happened. And let me tell you, when a story involves grandmothers, you just know there's going to be something shocking that leaves you speechless. So, what's the full story behind this case? Let's dive in and break it all down. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoy this story, share it with your friends to spread the word. So, here's how it goes. Meet Ramona, a woman born in 1964 with 2 children. Her husband, Cyprian, was a former army commander who owned several properties and large pieces of land across Romania. With multiple sources of income, not just his salary, the family lived comfortably. Their eldest, Bianca, works as a nurse and still lives with her parents, while the youngest lives out of town in Buzău. Now, let's rewind a bit. Ramona wasn't Cyprian's first wife. He met her during a tough time after losing his first wife. At the time, Ramona worked as a comfort woman, hired at a hotel during Cyprian's 3-day service in Buzău. Recognizing Cyprian's wealth, Ramona pursued him relentlessly. Eventually, Cyprian began dating her, and by 2002, they got married. Ramona became the stepmother to Bianca and her sibling. Their relationship wasn't without drama. Ramona and the children often clashed, but things settled down, especially when Ramona realized Cyprian planned to leave a significant inheritance to her and the kids. Upon Cyprian's death in 2011, Ramona received 30% of the plantation land, while their large home was divided into 3 shares, one for her and one for each child. Cyprian's parting wish was for the family to keep the house, preserving their memories there. Honoring his request, Bianca stayed in the house with her stepmother, and the family remained close. In 2014, Bianca married Reyes, a man 2 years younger than her. The couple moved in with Ramona, and a year later, they welcomed their son. Ramona's life shifted entirely with the arrival of her grandson. Once a social butterfly who hung out with her youthful entertainer friends, Ramona now dedicated herself to caring for and playing with her grandson. Whenever Bianca and Reyes were at work, Ramona stepped in, looking after the little boy with the help of a babysitter. More joy came a few years later when Bianca's sibling in Buzău got married and had 2 children of their own. Ramona was thrilled, especially since she had never had children of her own due to the contraceptives she used during her years as a prostitute. But now, with 3 grandchildren from her stepchildren, Ramona felt her life was full and happy. In March 2018, Ramona reconnected with her childhood friend Serena through social media. They met up and had a blast catching up, sharing stories that reignited their bond. A little background on Serena: she's quite different from Ramona's other friends. Serena was born male but later transitioned into a woman and has worked as an entertainer her whole life. Now 53, she sells second-hand clothes. Meeting up again after all these years was exciting for both of them, and they found plenty to talk about. During one of their chats, Ramona opened up about her struggles since her husband passed away. She confided that she missed having a man in her life, someone to hold her, care for her, and make her feel wanted again. But her attempts to meet men through social media had been discouraging. Many ignored her, some rejected her outright, and a few even hurled cruel insults her way. Hearing this, Serena offered some advice, saying, "Men on social media are like that. They might reject you in the chats, but if you meet them in person and things heat up, they'll usually come around." Serena suggested Ramona create a fake profile using a photo of a young, beautiful woman. If the conversation goes well and you meet in person, Serena said, you can always make excuses for the photo. Ramona agreed and set up a profile using a photo of a gorgeous young woman. Soon, she connected with Adrian, a 31-year-old man who was handsome and fit her taste perfectly. They arranged to meet in April 2018 at a hotel, with Serena tagging along for support. When they met, the encounter took an unexpected twist. Both Ramona and Adrian had used fake photos. Adrian wasn't a bank worker as he'd claimed. He was actually a t-shirt and sandal vendor. Ramona, meanwhile, was far from the youthful image her profile had portrayed. Despite their initial anger and disappointment, Serena stepped in with some practical advice. You're already here, and clearly both of you had certain expectations. Why not just go through with it and enjoy yourselves? After some hesitation, Ramona and Adrian agreed. They ended up spending nearly 2 hours together in the hotel room while Serena waited in the lobby. The next day, Adrian kept messaging Ramona, asking to meet again, but she wasn't interested. However, something had changed for Ramona. That experience gave her a massive confidence boost. She realized that even younger men could still find her attractive and desirable. Maybe the photo wasn't the best, she thought, but in person, my charm is undeniable. Long story short, when the pandemic hit in 2020, Bianca's family felt the impact pretty hard. Her husband, Rares, was laid off from his job in April, leaving Bianca to pick up the slack and work even harder to keep things afloat. While they had some savings from their inheritance, they still needed a steady income. So, when Bianca was offered a temporary position at Buzău City General Hospital to help with the surge in pandemic patients, she agreed. This meant leaving her 5-year-old son at home with Rares, who looked after him alongside his mother-in-law, Ramona. At first, things seemed normal enough. But after about a month of Bianca's absence, Rares began to notice some odd behavior from Ramona. She started acting overly friendly, smiling and flirting, always finding excuses to touch him when she passed by in the kitchen or handed him something. At first, Rares brushed it off, thinking maybe she didn't mean anything by it. But over time, her behavior became more deliberate. For instance, if Ramona was drinking from a glass, she would grab his and stick her tongue inside it as if it were a joke. On rainy nights, she'd come into his room, claiming to be scared of the storm, and wrap herself in his arms, saying it was too cold to be alone. Feeling uncomfortable, Rares decided to tell Bianca about her mother's strange behavior during one of their phone calls. Bianca was shocked and immediately confronted Ramona, warning her to stop. Ramona, however, dismissed it all, saying it was accidental and harmless. Offended by the accusation, she called Rares a hypocrite and a snitch. The next day, Ramona gave him the silent treatment, refusing to even acknowledge her grandson when he tried to interact with her. Rares felt trapped in an increasingly awkward situation. Despite his efforts to avoid her, Ramona's behavior only escalated. She'd conveniently forget a towel after showering and walk to her room in revealing clothing. Sometimes, she wore a thin, nearly see-through negligee with nothing underneath, leaving little to the imagination. She'd also bump into him intentionally whenever they crossed paths in the kitchen or living room. Rares remained unbothered by her attempts, but Ramona was determined. Frustrated by his lack of response, she turned to her friend Serena for advice, asking how she could seduce her son-in-law. Ramona had one thing on her mind: finding a way to get Rares into her bed. On the night of June 13, 2020, Serena and Ramona slipped sleeping pills into Rares' food, leaving him groggy and struggling to stay awake. Though he was dizzy and disoriented, he still managed to resist their advances, fighting them off despite his weakened state. In the chaos, Serena grabbed an iron bar and struck him, knocking him unconscious. What happened next was something unthinkable. Ramona carried out her despicable intentions with Serena's help. The next morning, Rares woke up horrified at what had happened. He immediately called Bianca and told her everything. Shocked and furious, Bianca cut her service short and rushed back to Brăila. She insisted Rares file a police report, but without concrete evidence, their complaint was dismissed. adding insult to injury. Even Bianca found it hard to believe that someone as strong as Reyes could be overpowered by her stepmother. This disbelief led to explosive fights between Bianca and Ramona. The arguments escalated into physical altercations, with clawing, shoving, and insults flying. Things got so bad that Bianca's sibling came from Bozo to mediate. Eventually, with the help of an uncle, they managed to get Ramona to leave the house. Ramona didn't resist, on the condition that she was immediately paid her share of the property in cash. After 2 weeks, Ramona received her money and moved into one of her late husband's houses in Galati. Still flush with cash and property titles, Ramona invited Serena to move in with her, and the two began a carefree, indulgent lifestyle. By early 2021, Ramona and Serena regularly hired young men to satisfy their forbidden desires. Serena, skilled at bargaining, always managed to find men who fit their preferences. Muscular, six-pack abs, bearded, bad boy types, or whatever they fancied. Occasionally, they even spent extra to arrange threesomes. But by January 2021, cracks began to show in their friendship. Serena started using Ramona's money and ATM cards freely, even going so far as to hire male entertainers without including Ramona. One day, Serena invited a man over for some private fun while Ramona wasn't invited at all. Ramona was livid. "You're living in my house, using my money, and you don't even include me," she fumed. To make matters worse, Ramona had always relied on Serena to find the right men. She didn't have her own connections, so Serena's betrayal felt even deeper. To appease her, Serena quickly found another man to entertain Ramona. But when he arrived, Ramona's anger only intensified. The man was far from the handsome, dashing type she liked. He was unkempt, smelled bad, and had no charm whatsoever. "What is this?" Ramona yelled. "You get the good ones, and you send me this?" The fight escalated, shaking the foundation of their friendship. Ramona's fury had reached its peak, and the rift between them seemed impossible to repair. In the end, a massive fight between Ramona and Serena was unavoidable. It escalated into a full-on brawl, complete with punches and pots being thrown. But since Serena was, well, biologically male, Ramona didn't stand a chance. She ended up injured and spent a week in the hospital. Meanwhile, Serena disappeared without a trace, taking $6,000 of Ramona's money with her. Surprisingly, Ramona didn't pursue her or the stolen money. Instead, she focused on living alone and trying to get her life back on track. But staying low-key wasn't exactly in Ramona's nature. Being flirtatious had always been her thing, and she wasn't about to change. Inspired by Serena's tactics, she decided to give online dating a shot. Using Tinder, she created a profile with a photo of a young, attractive woman. Her plan: even if her real appearance disappointed someone, her charm and seductive skills might still win them over. For the first week, things didn't look promising. But then she matched with a 24-year-old man named Petru, who worked as an electrical installer. They hit it off surprisingly well. How well? They started calling each other almost every night, with conversations that quickly turned steamy. Ramona claimed to be a 35-year-old widow with plenty of experience, which left Petru intrigued and eager for more. The two never video called, conveniently for Ramona, since Petru's phone had a broken camera. She'd playfully tease him, saying, "It's such a shame we can't video call. It'd be so much fun." Petru promised to save up for a new phone so their conversations could be even better in the future. By early March 2021, after 3 weeks of flirty phone calls, they decided to meet in person. The plan was for Petru to come to Ramona's house for what she promised would be an unforgettable evening. She even suggested he take stamina pills ahead of time to keep things exciting. But her suggestion had another purpose. She hoped that if Petru wasn't pleased with her real appearance, he'd be too aroused to resist anyway. On March 7, 2021, at 9 p.m., Petru arrived at Ramona's house, and his shock was immediate. The woman he thought was 35 turned out to be 55. Ramona tried to brush it off, joking that the profile picture was her daughter, but Petru wasn't having it. He was furious and refused to go through with the date, even pulling away when Ramona tried to seduce him in the living room. Ramona, however, wasn't about to give up. She played the calm card, telling him, "It's fine if you don't want to. Just stay, have some tea, and rest a bit. You can leave when you feel better." But Ramona had a backup plan, one she'd learned from Serena. She spiked Petru's tea with sleeping pills, leaving him too groggy to resist. Though Petru was aware of what was happening, his body felt heavy and limp, unable to fight back. Ramona took full advantage of the situation, crossing a line that could never be undone. The next morning, Petru woke up in a fit of rage. He lashed out, hitting Ramona, smashing furniture, and even breaking the front window. The commotion attracted neighbors, who intervened and held him back until the neighborhood chief arrived. When questioned, Petru revealed everything that had happened the night before. Ramona, however, denied it all, insisting it was consensual. The neighbors didn't believe Petru's story. They laughed, finding it hard to imagine a strong young man being overpowered by an older woman. Some even accused him of fabricating the story to extort money from Ramona, knowing she was wealthy. They ultimately sided with her, mocking Petru and kicking him out of the neighborhood. Ramona, feeling victorious, laughed as she watched him leave. The next day, Ramona sent Petru a smug text, gloating about how no one believed him. She suggested he come back in 2 days for a second date. This time, she offered to pay him, adding a condition. He should bring along a friend, another construction worker, to make things even more exciting. Ramona was thrilled at the thought of entertaining 2 young men at once. To her surprise, Petru returned earlier than expected, showing up alone at 12 p.m. on March 9, 2021. Ramona greeted him warmly, excited that he'd come back. But her excitement turned to terror when Petru pulled a hammer out of his bag and struck her. Dazed and bleeding, Ramona tried to get up, but Petru grabbed a sharp-tipped umbrella near the door and plunged it into her with all his strength. Ramona collapsed in her living room, taking her final breath. Petru then ran to the porch, screaming at the top of his lungs. Neighbors quickly gathered, including the neighborhood chief, who was horrified by the scene and called the police. The investigation that followed shocked the authorities. The idea of a young man harboring such resentment toward an older woman after a relationship was hard for them to wrap their heads around. On the surface, Petru seemed like an unlikely suspect, quiet, introverted, and unassuming. His co-workers described him as someone who rarely spoke unless spoken to first. During breaks, Petru would often sit in a corner, head down, lost in thought. He was shy and reserved, making it difficult for anyone to believe he had been involved in such a bizarre and tragic situation. The notion of him being romantically involved with a woman who had 3 grandchildren seemed strange, almost unbelievable. And yet, it was true. Tragically, this relationship, and the events that unfolded, led Petru down a path that landed him in jail, leaving many to pity both him and the life he threw away. Petru's lawyer played a crucial role as his spokesperson since the young man barely spoke during police questioning. With his lawyer, however, Petru finally opened up, sharing the full story of what had happened. The neighborhood chief also testified in court, believing that any tension between Petru and Ramona had been resolved. But clearly, it hadn't. Cases like this are complicated. Many in the neighborhood assumed that since the victim was male, no lasting harm could have occurred. After all, he couldn't get pregnant or be visibly hurt. But this kind of thinking is deeply flawed. Trauma doesn't discriminate based on gender, and the psychological scars left by coercion and manipulation are just as real and painful. According to Petru's lawyer, this trauma was the driving force behind Petru's actions. He felt completely unsupported, no one believed him, no one stood by him, and Ramona, with her manipulative ways, had cornered him emotionally and socially. To Petru, vigilante justice seemed like the only option to reclaim his dignity and confront his abuser. The investigation into the case revealed plenty of evidence against Ramona. Chat logs and the discovery of sleeping pills in her house backed up Petru's claims. Testimony from Bianca, her stepdaughter, further confirmed Ramona's pattern of behavior. Bianca revealed that this wasn't the first time Ramona had crossed a line. Her husband, Rares, had also been a victim. His complaint to the police had been dismissed, leaving the family frustrated and vulnerable. Reyes testified in court, calling for leniency toward Petru and urging authorities to arrest Ramona's friend Serena, who was still at large. Petru's family attended the trial, often breaking into tears. Despite his quiet demeanor, Petru had always been the backbone of his family, working tirelessly to provide for his parents, especially during the pandemic. The thought of losing him to a lengthy prison sentence was devastating for them. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that Petru wasn't just a victim of harassment but also a victim of online fraud. Ramona had used fake photos to lure him into her house under false pretenses. Despite the mitigating circumstances, Petru was charged with vigilantism and violence. The court sentenced him to 12 years and 6 months in prison, with no option for bail. While the sentence was heartbreaking for his family, it was far lighter than the prosecutor's original demand of life imprisonment, leaving them with no grounds to appeal. As for Serena, Bianca and Reyes' complaint against her was finally accepted. However, as of the time this story is being told, Serena remains at large, and authorities have yet to make an arrest. What lessons can we take from this story? You can comment below.